Hello citizens, the Premier League is of course on a break for the World Cup, and this is a perfect time to do a review for Man City's season so far. So that's what we're going to be doing, so make sure to hit the like button, hit subscribe as well if you're new. Both of those things really help the channel to grow and help us be seen by more people, so thank you for doing that. And let's jump into it. So we started our Premier League title defence away to West Ham, and on paper this was a tough game. You know, we were there at the end of last season and we drew 2-2 after being 2-0 down at half time. And on the back of a good European campaign, West Ham went into the season with a little bit of optimism and hope too. And going away to any team in the Premier League first game of the season is never going to be easy for anyone. You got the home team up for it, the fans are up for it, and they're playing the English champions, and they probably thought they had a chance of winning it. But ultimately, this game was all about Erling Haaland. Now, having arrived at England and missed that big chance in the Community Shield, you know, he was already being branded a flop, you know, a fail. But he arrived in this game and he really impressed me as well. You know, his power, his pace, his strength, his height, everything. You know, I'd seen highlights of him. I'd seen him play games, of course, but looking at him in a City shirt for the first time, I was really, really impressed. You know, his power and pace won him the penalty. He finished it wonderfully inside of the post. You know, you don't save those penalties. And his second goal as well, a wonderful ball by De Bruyne, straight through for Haaland, who didn't even touch the ball, just ran around it and caressed it into the net under the goalkeeper. It was a fantastic performance from him. And in his own words, it wasn't perfect because, you know, he thought he should have had a hat-trick, which I think it was a difficult chance, but he said he should have scored it. And that to me showing his mentality as well. It was a fantastic start from him. And it was a fantastic start from the team as well. Other than the first few flurry of chances at the beginning and towards the end, West Ham didn't really have anything. You know, the defence held up. De Bruyne was wonderful. You know, Rodri played really well too. You know, and Diaz, I thought Diaz was absolutely solid at back, you know, proper leader. And like I said, with Haaland up front, it was just a wonderful performance all around. And it was near perfect, this game. It really was. And it was a fantastic way to start the season. Our first home game of the season was against Bournemouth, in which we won 4-0, a routine win against a Bournemouth team who just sat back, defended and tried to concede as few as possible, which is what they did. And they kept Haaland out. Haaland did not score in this one. He should have done it if Foden rolled the ball across to him for an open net, but Haaland did get a wonderful assist. Nice link-up play of Gundogan, holding off two defenders, feeding him through, and Gundogan making it 1-0. And in this game, we started off with De Bruyne and Gundogan in midfield. And we've been saying all season that them two don't really work there together unless it's this kind of game against a Bournemouth team who are probably going down, you know, who are not looking to score goals and who are just trying to defend for the whole 90 minutes and really offering no forward presence. This was the game you play them two. Not in the next one. Newcastle 3, City 3. As a neutral and as a Newcastle fan, this was probably enjoyable. This was probably an epic. But as a City fan, this was painful to watch. This was City not learning from mistakes from previous seasons. It really was. After getting off to such a good start through Gundogan, you're thinking to yourself, okay, we got this. You know, we can go to St. James's Park and perform here against a resurgent Newcastle team who were well up for the fight. However, after that goal, we went downhill fast. We were absolutely dire for about 60 minutes. Newcastle raced into a 3-1 lead. And how did they do it? Counter-attack with pace. Through wing play, they absolutely did us every single time. St. Maximin, Almiron, they had our fullbacks. You know, Walker should have been able to handle St. Maximin, but he didn't. He didn't at all. St. Maximin was doing him every single time they went forward. Wilson as well in the middle. You know, our defence was all over the place in this game, and we dragged ourselves back into it through a Haaland goal and, of course, a Bernardo Silva finish after an unbelievable pass from De Bruyne that went through the defender's legs. And you're probably going to say 3-0. I think we got away with this one. I really do. I think this was a warning shot, one that we didn't learn from and one we didn't take on board. And that is, you know, not just the fact that we went 3-1 down and we got done by counter-attacks, but we played Gundogan and De Bruyne in midfield together and it just didn't seem to work. It really didn't. And it won't be the last time. It really won't. But Newcastle 3, City 3, I'm telling you right now, I do think we got away with this one. Even though we had most of the shots and possession, we got off lightly. Next up was Crystal Palace at the Etihad. And it was almost an absolute disaster. Not only had City not learned from the previous game against Newcastle, in which we got done by the counter-attack over and over again, but we hadn't learned from previous Crystal Palace games at the Etihad from previous seasons, where Crystal Palace looked to soak up all the pressure, hit us on the break, and take every single chance that comes their way, which is what they did in this game without Zaha. They didn't have the best player, but they looked like scoring every time they went forward in that first half. They were absolutely ruthless, and our defence just couldn't handle them, whether aerially or for pace. And they rushed into a 2-0 lead in the first 21 minutes, and they probably deserved it. They really did. And at half-time, you know, City looked 45 days. We weren't creating anything. We were poor. We really were. However, you know, Haaland turned up in the second half. It was his first Premier League hat-trick, his first one for City. Really well taken. You know, his goal showing a bit of range in terms of positioning, determination, and his strength as well. It's a wonderful hat-trick, and he dragged us out the mire. Helped by Bernardo, of course, who got the ball rolling in the second half with his goal. But this was brutal, this first half. Unfortunately, we came away in the second half. And by the way, Crystal Palace only had 2 shots in that game. And they almost did it. They almost did us with it. Our next game was against Nottingham Forest. We won the game 6-0. Haaland got a perfect first half hat-trick. Cancelo scored in the second half, a wonderful goal from outside the box from him. And Alvarez scored 2 late on. A nice finish for the 6th. And for me, this was the first game where we really shown how dangerous we can be going forward. You know, we really did destroy them whenever we attacked. We took our chances. Haaland was clinical. Alvarez was clinical. And we did it without De Bruyne in the squad as well. We started off with Gundogan in this one. And we really did play well. And Nottingham Forest couldn't live with us. And they got a harsh reality to what the Premier League can be. And we really put them to the sword. And it was a good, solid performance throughout. Clean sheet, 6 goals, first half hat-trick from Haaland. And Alvarez looking like the player we wanted him to be when he signed. It was a great game. The next game was Villa away. It was a game where we controlled possession, we dominated from the beginning, and we limited them to absolutely nothing really for most of the game. It was a game we should have taken all 3 points. We took the lead through Haaland in the second half. A wonderful floated ball by De Bruyne that went over Martinez. Haaland, you know, volleying in from like 3 yards out, whatever it was. And from there, you're thinking, we should win this game. But Villa have their only shot on target and they score from it. And in a lot of respects, this game really sums City up, doesn't it? It's a game that screams typical City. We dropped 2 points when we really shouldn't have. We gave them nothing and they took the only chance they had. Typical. Next up was Wolves away, and we got off to a perfect start in this one. Foden and De Bruyne working well together down the right-hand side. Wonderful ball in by De Bruyne, and Grealish smashes it in from like 10 yards within the first minute, and from then on it's probably game over. Haaland got a second in the first half, and when they had a man sent off, it really was game over. They offered very little in the second, and the second half just kind of petered out. We did get a late goal through Foden. Again, more wonderful play by Haaland and De Bruyne this time. And yeah, it was just a routine win, really was. Haaland taking his goal nicely with his right foot. And in this one, Haaland really did show his link-up play really nicely for me. Again, you know, it's one of those things that doesn't get highlighted often. But Haaland, you know, of course he can hold the ball up. He's got this strength too. He can run through on a ball with his pace. But he's got some nice touches in him. And he has got an eye for a pass. And we'll see that in the next game. Next up was Derby Day, City 6, United 3. And this was an absolute batter. And this could have been 10-0. You know, by the end of the game. City took their foot off the gas in the second half, but that first half performance, United absolutely bottled it, and City put them to the sword. Foden and Haaland in particular were unbelievable in this game, unplayable. And don't forget, this is a United team that came into this one with a little bit of confidence, having beaten Liverpool and beaten Arsenal as well, and they should have beaten Chelsea this season too. So, you know, they had a reason to come into this thinking they can get a result, but City put an end to that from the very first kick. It was an absolutely dominating performance from the entire team in that opening 45. The only criticism I have is when Pep made all his substitutions in the second half, we lost that momentum, you know, we lost a little bit of impetus and we let United back into it. We really shouldn't have let United score them late goals to make it 6-3. That's the only disappointing thing about this game, but otherwise, complete performance, and, you know, it was wonderful to see. It really was. Absolutely destroyed them. Next up to the Etihad was Southampton, and much like against Bournemouth earlier in the season, it was a routine 4-0 win for City. I expected more from Southampton in this one, considering last season they ground out 2 frustrating draws against us, and it looked like that's how they were setting up for this one as well. They were time wasting from the kickoff, taking the time over set pieces and throw-ins, but once Cancelo put City in front in the first half, it was pretty much game over. Southampton retreated within themselves. They lost all motivation, and they just kind of wilted and offered very little. And, the highlight of the first half over in the goals was Haaland smashing it against the post. Not getting a hat-trick, but he did get his goal late on. So yeah, routine 4-0 win for this one. Quite an easy one. And of course, our first defeat of the season came away to Liverpool at Anfield, and it was a very frustrating result for a few reasons. One of them being that City hadn't learned from previous games this season or past seasons. Liverpool let us control possession, then they hit us on the break, they kicked it long, they exposed our defence's lack of pace, and they were clinical with their chance when it came. And most of their chances, most of their shots came in the second half when we were chasing an equaliser. Now, we possibly would have got something out of the game if Cancelo hadn't done Cancelo defending things and let Salah run through with Ederson one-on-one. But that being said, it's not Cancelo's fault. This is on Pep, this result. And it's not the only one this season. This was Pep playing himself. This was Pep thinking before the game that he needed to change a winning formula. He stuck De Bruyne on the right wing. He took Grealish out to let Gundogan in, instead of playing Grealish, Foden and Haaland up front like he had done against United, like he had done against Wolves, like he had done against other teams. When it worked, when we were winning, when everyone was flying, he decided to change things up. And it cost us. It really did. And who lets Cancelo defend as last man anyway against Salah? Who does that? Pep does that because he switched up a little bit. Because I've said time and time again, Pep's the only person that can beat Pep. He thinks too much about it. He tries to change it. He tries to be clever, and it doesn't work. We get hurt with it in the Champions League every season, and we got hurt with it here. And also, just to point out, one of the frustrating things about Pep is his substitutions or lack of. We'd seen it earlier in the season as well in some games like Newcastle, lack of substitutions when we needed them. This was another one. He brings on Alvarez in the 89th minute at Anfield when we're 1-0 down. Why had he not made early substitutions? Why had he not tried to change things up sooner? Only Pep knows. Why had he not brought Alvarez on sooner? Only Pep knows. So next up, we had Brighton at the Etihad, and we bounced back with a 3-1 win. But it wasn't a convincing 3-1 win. I thought Brighton deserved something out of this game. If you look at possession, Brighton had more. You don't see that at the Etihad, a team coming to us and controlling the ball more than us. But Brighton did it. And if you look at the aerial duels as well, it's not even a contest. Brighton wanted this win more than us, and somehow Haaland dragged us there in the first half. Remember, it was a long ball over by Ederson. Haaland bounces off Donker, whoever it was, and put the ball in the empty net after rounding the keeper. And it was one of those games where you don't have the Liverpool games kind of affected the players' mentality a little bit of confidence is gone, or they're just not interested. But this was the first game for me where I thought, we need the World Cup break because we are not playing that well. It was the first time I saw a performance drop for a while, and yeah, it was a poor performance, and honestly, I think we were quite lucky to come away 3-1 winners. Next up was Leicester at the King Power Stadium, and it was a hard-fought victory for City, a 1-0 away win against a Leicester team who had won their previous 3 games after a poor start to the season. And to win against that Leicester team was actually a good result because they were full of confidence all of a sudden. They were playing well, they were scoring goals, and we kept a clean sheet against them. It was a solid defensive performance. We won the game in the second half through a wonderful De Bruyne 25-yard free kick, went in off the post. And this was a game where we didn't start Haaland as well. And I think when we don't play Haaland, it's important to win as well and show that we can win without him, because you don't want people saying we can only win with Haaland in the team. You don't want any of that. And with Alvarez starting, I think getting the victory was quite important for us for a couple of reasons. And if you look at it as well, just a little note, Marrett started on the bench on this one, and in the second half we were lacking a bit of creativity. We weren't creating much, we weren't taking our chances, and it just seemed like this game could have done with fresh pair of legs from the City team, or a bit of more creativity, a bit more energy. And to not bring Mahrez on in this kind of game instead of shore up the defense and make a defensive substitution, I think shows us that Pep's not really feeling Mahrez this season and not really trusting people to come off the bench and win those games. Instead, he's looking at keeping the clean sheet rather than get more goals. I don't know if you would have seen that from Pep last season or previous ones. I'm not really sure. Then, of course, came Fulham at the Etihad, a game where you'd expect us to win 100% of the time. But I remember saying in my match preview, this isn't going to be an easy game because Fulham are playing well and Silva has got them playing good football. And it proved to be the case. We took the lead early on through Alvarez, a wonderfully taken finish from him, which I thought Leno probably should have saved. And then Fulham get back into it after Cancelo makes a foul in the box and gets sent off. Pereira finishes it, makes it 1-1. And then we're playing 60, 70 minutes with 10 men. But we still controlled possession. We still had all the chances. Fulham still looked to grind out the draw. We were the only team really looking to win the game. And in the second half, when it wasn't quite working out for us, Pep didn't look to Marrett to come on, and freshen things up a little bit, our leading scorer from last season. He didn't do that. Instead, he risked Haaland and brought him on for 25 minutes. It almost proved immediately a success as Haaland has a goal ruled out. It was a good header though. But Haaland did manage to win it in injury time. 95th minute, I think he scored it. And it was one of those frustrating games and one of those results where you look back at the end of the season and you think to yourself, that could win us the league. That could be the reason why we're lifting the trophy. And it was a big result and you felt it, even though it was only Fulham, getting that second goal in the 95th minute, you could see the celebrations, the relief on the players' faces, and you're thinking, okay, finish strong for the World Cup. That's what this game said. Finish strong for the World Cup and go in on a high. And then things came crashing back down in the last game we've had against Brentford, where we got beat 2-1 at the Etihad. A very poor performance from City from start to finish. We did not deserve a result in this one. And if it wasn't from Edison in the first half, we would have got battered. We could have been 4-5-0 down by half time. We started off poorly, we continued poorly, and we ended poorly. Brentford, they soaked up the pressure. They only had 25% possession. They only had 10 shots to our 29, but they had more shots on target, which showing you what a good job Edison did, because pretty much every single one of their shots was a decent chance and almost clear cut, which they should have been scoring. And Tony could have had 4 or 5 goals in this one. It really was poor. But of course, after Brentford took the lead, we grind it out. We get back into it. And again, things I've seen in recent seasons, I've seen it against Wolves. I've seen it against Leeds. I've seen it against Liverpool. We're so desperate to win in injury time or late on in the last 5 minutes that we push everyone forward and we forget that we still have a point. And one of the things from last season that I remember in a match reaction is complaining against Tottenham, where we were 2-1 down going into injury time. We get an equaliser to make it 2-2, and then we go and throw it away by letting them have one more chance because we pushed up to win the game and they hit us on the break. And this is what Brentford did. They did it to us. And I've seen it so many times on the Pep Guardiola. Yes, great. We're drawing 1-0 with Brentford in injury time. Yes, we can go on and win it. Just take the point. We were playing poorly. We're lucky to be coming away from a point, but instead we pushed everyone forward. They hit us on the break and they score. And, they could have got another one as well. If it was for De Bruyne, of all people, De Bruyne was the last one, the last defender clearing it off the line because everyone else had pushed forward, including the fullbacks, including the centre-halves. It was De Bruyne left defending against 3 Brentford players. Instead of taking the point, we go throw that away and we let them win. And that could hurt us at the end of the season. It really could. And it was also another game where Pep decided to make one substitution. We're crying out for something. We're crying out for someone to create. We're crying out for a bit of magic, anything. And he brought on Alvarez in the 87th minute and did absolutely nothing. Although Alvarez, he did have a chance to play Haaland in, but Haaland slipped at the end, so it almost worked. But one substitution from a Pep in a game where we were dire. And that's how we ended our pre-World Cup season. It was a poor result, but it was deserved. Brentford deserved it, in my opinion. And so that's our review for this season so far. We did finish a little bit underwhelming. Some poor performances and results, considering the good start to the campaign that we had. But let me know in the comments who your standout performers are, who you would drop, who you might sign in January, given the money. And make sure to hit that like button. Hit subscribe as well. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments what you thought. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.